This is a mixed media sketchbook, and the watercolors are nothing special. They're just a simple watercolor palette that I ordered from Amazon. Now this stuff is awesome. It's liquid masking fluid, and you use it to basically block out sections of your paper that you don't want to get paint on while you are painting your design. It can be pretty tricky to use though unless you use it properly. If you dip your brush directly into the masking fluid, it's almost impossible to wash out of the bristles. So what you have to do instead is get your brush wet with a little bit of water, and then you actually dip it into some dish soap, and then you dip it into the masking fluid. And after a few times of using the masking fluid, you want to re-dip it into the liquid dish detergent, and then that will make it easy to wash out of the bristles later. And then the soap doesn't seem to mess with the masking fluid at all, so it's great. Once the liquid masking fluid is completely dry, then you can paint right over it. Once I start painting, I really like to put down a layer of water so that I can start off with wet on wet. I love the way that the toadstool looks when the watercolor pigment spreads on its own. It's very organic looking. You'll see that I'm building up the color of the toadstool by adding basically layer after layer of paint until I am happy with the richness of the toadstool and also the colors. So I started off with your basic cherry red, and then I went in with kind of a darker, maybe maroon or brownish red, you might say. I always like to leave the paint a little thinner on one area of the toadstool. Usually the top left is where I find I like to have like a highlight. My paintbrush drips some water right below the base of the toadstool, and I made the mistake of swiping up to wipe it off, and you see that what happened was the toadstool colors bled down onto the lower part of the toadstool. Watercolors are not very forgiving, but a little pulling up of the dry brush can do wonders. With a clean wet brush, I push the pigment around a little bit on the highlight areas to give it a little bit of a lighter look. And then here I continue to add darker colors to add contrast to the mushroom cap. Now moving down to the stalk, we are continuing with wet on wet in the center portion of it. You'll see that some of it is wet on wet and then some of it is wet on dry. There's something about the way the two techniques complement each other in the same painting, and I really love it on these mushrooms. Before I paint the skirt that is just below the mushroom cap, I've got to blow dry the base of the mushroom cap so that I don't have any more bleeding. These last two wet spots will continue to dry on their own while I paint the stalk. And here I continue to paint in more detail, sort of building up the pigment. I think this is one of my favorite parts of every painting, is the bringing in the contrast between lights and darks. There's something about it that is so satisfying. This next part is so satisfying because it is time to remove the dried liquid masking fluid from the mushroom cap. All you need is an eraser, and you just need to make sure you use the right amount of pressure. Be careful not to push too hard, because if you do, you might accidentally smear some of the paint pigment around, and you really don't want to do that. To remove the eraser pieces, I really recommend using a clean brush or a clean washcloth, because if you do use your hands, you might actually smear the paint again because of any moisture or oils on your hands. You might have noticed that I also switched to a pencil eraser. I felt like I had better control to remove the masking fluid with a stiff pencil than I did with the larger eraser. Just a reminder, you do want to make sure your watercolors are completely dry before you go ahead to remove the masking fluid. When you're finished, you can gently run your hands along the surface to make sure you didn't miss anything. Now I'm going in with some shadows around the little flecks on the cap of the mushroom. So this particular mushroom is called a fly agaric mushroom, and a little fun fact, these flecks on the mushroom cap are actually parts of what is called a veil. When the mushroom was smaller, it had a white veil that was like a protective coating, and then as the mushroom got bigger, it broke apart. So these white warty spots on the red cap are the remains of the veil. The last time I painted a fly agaric mushroom, I actually waited to remove the masking fluid until after I put these little shadows around the flecks on top, and I actually did like the way that looked better because it kept the white flecks more crisp. Now that I've completed putting the little shadows around the flecks, I'm going in and putting a little bit of detail on the tops of the flecks so that they stand out a little more and have a little more character. And now our mushroom is finished. Thanks you guys so much for coming by. I hope you liked what you saw. Subscribe to see more videos like this.